Welcome back to Toula's Tips for Caregivers. Again, this show's gone so fast. My guests today are Andrea and Royce Hart, the owners and agency directors of Bright Star Home Care. Just before the show, we had a caller call. John, are you still there? It's good to hear your voice, John. Concern for you. Tell me what kind of recovery you're having and if Bright Star might be able to help you in any way. It's quick.
Yes.
Right. And you need somebody to help you with all of that. Nobody can do that alone. Right.
Definitely.
And then you kind of got this little emotional thing going because, okay, that is a volunteer family member and they're trying to help you, but maybe they're not doing the best they could, and you feel bad that they're being burdened to have to do that. So, there's guilt, and it can be a tricky thing. Correct. And maybe you don't want to be seen by them. Some of us aren't at our very best when we're in pain. I could say that about me. Yeah. Well, that's where a good hospital social worker or discharge planner should come into play. Sadly, these things just happen. People fall, break a hip, go in, and oh boy, mom can't go back home the way that she was. But usually within the span of that hospital stay, social workers really do get involved these days on day of admission to contact the family early enough to start that planning process. But as Andrea alluded to earlier, when it comes to choosing a home care agency, they will typically hand you a list. If it's a hospital that owns their own home health agency, they'll hand you the list and say you have a choice. Of course you have a choice, but we do have one ourselves. And so, you really do need to do the research, as we alluded to a little earlier, to be able to get the care that you need.
Yeah, and then also we had talked about doctor education, because sometimes the doctor will not order home care for our caller. I would hope that they would have with having some type of surgery, but you never know. They might not see you if you're a child, or if you look okay.
Right.
They're not thinking home care.
Right, and there might.
Yeah, make sure you come back for your appointment.
I'm sorry to hear that.
Yeah.
That's true.
Yep. Well, we're talking about if we're talking about the senior, the answer is yes. If like the scenario you just described, a person falling, breaking a hip, needing to go home with some nursing care and some physical therapy, Medicare does cover that.
But also, you just have to check your insurance plan. Most decent insurance plans do have
Correct.
home health coverage, but it definitely does have to be ordered by your doctor. And if it's something you feel that you need, tell your doctor, can you put a prescription, an order down for home health? And the insurance typically will cover it. We do take insurance, and most home healths take it. We don't take the Medicare, but Medicare doesn't pay for everything. Anybody that's on Medicare knows that.
But it does pay for some physical therapy, following a hip fracture, and that sort of thing.
And
that's a whole other educational process, and
yes.
we need to do a show on it, what Medicare and Medicaid covers, and we will do a show on that because that's important. The services that Bright Star has been describing here today are not covered by Medicare in the way of a sitter, a home companion, a CNA coming to be with you, say 3 to 4 hours a day to provide assistance. And so if anybody, either of you would like to talk about some of the costs that are associated with that, starting with the CNA and then going up, if you will, in terms of skilled services, that'd be super because people need to know what to expect.
Yeah, sure. We have CNAs start at 18 to 22 an hour.
Yeah.
And depending on the level of care, I mean, there's tons of prices that we have. But depending on the level of care that you need, I believe our RNs are...
They start out at about 50, but what happens with $50 an hour, what happens with that is once we see or we have somebody call in to us, we have Royce go out with our director of nursing, and they go ahead and sign an agreement, but the director of nursing actually evaluates the patient and where they're at. So we know where the prices start at 18, but we don't know what level of care is actually needed. Exactly. And like I said before, because we're a staffing agency, typically the more skilled the RNs are, the most costly. But you might not need an RN. You might
The RN may go out and do the assessment, and she may determine that a CNA will suffice.
And that's
or
completely
LPN.
free. We don't charge for assessments.
Well, that's good
the
to
initial
know.
assessment, because we know we're testing each other out.
Right at that point, that makes perfect sense.
So yeah, those assessments are usually most companies charge about $100 for those, but we don't do that. But she'll write up the complete plan of care, and then we'll take her recommendation as to what would be best for your loved one.
Typically, when somebody needs an RN around the clock, typically they go in some sort of institution actually to get that care. Because a lot of folks have a hard time.
But that's expensive, though.
It's very expensive.
Very expensive.
It is.
And I always tell people, I'm like, yeah, you can go in an institution, but it's cheaper to keep them at your house and have somebody come in. 12 hours, or have a CNA kind of watch them for 12 hours and have the RN come in maybe twice a day or something.
There you go. That's a much better alternative.
Well, nowadays with the way prices are, they're not getting any cheaper.
No.
And insurance. I was working in insurance with the worksite wellness I did. They're covering less and less.
Yeah.
So you gotta be creative nowadays.
Yes.
Yeah, that's true. You definitely gotta be creative. Well, tell me again what payment sources you do take.
We do take most insurances. We are private duty, which means that we don't take Medicare with us. The paperwork and things associated with it is just too much that we can't handle. But we do work with Medicare agencies because Medicare does not. Anybody that's in Medicare knows that in home health, Medicare does not cover everything. They won't cover the companions, the sitters, and there's you have to know Medicare to figure out what they cover and what they don't cover. But we fill in the gaps. So we do work with companies like Medi Home Health and things of that nature to so you can have some of the Medicare services and then have some of the services that we provide. Yeah, for the whole total plan of care.
Well, I'm going to ask you to tell us before the show ends, which it's getting ready to quickly. How do we reach you? What's the number? The phone number for the agency?
It's the number that you can reach us at 24 hours a day is 904-807-9955.
Yes.
Say that again.
904-807-9955. We always answer our phones.
24/7. That's good
no
to know
voice,
too,
no service.
People need services. They need services, and it may be midnight when they decide at some time.
Yes.
So I definitely understand that. You've given me a lot of new information today. Listeners, I hope you've learned some information too. John, if you're still holding, please give the producer your information so he can mail a gift certificate. I can mail a gift certificate to you. You're listening to Toula's Tips for Caregivers on Talk Radio 600 WBOB. Please join us next week when my guest will be Mike Jorgensen, who's going to talk to us and give us some stories about people who failed to plan properly and some of the resulting consequences. We'll be back next Saturday.